everybody. Welcome back into Mining Stock Daily. Trevor Hall here, continuing our day with more corporate updates. Happy to welcome in Charles Funk, now CEO of Heliostar Metals. Charles, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You put out those drill results that have extended that high-grade panel at the Ana Paula Project there in Mexico. These were, trying to decide, trying to look at the breadth of this high-grade panel and trying to add a little bit to it. You've successfully done that and also actually received a little bit higher of gold grades than you were originally expecting. So break down these three holes that you reported, 303, 304, and 305.
Yeah, thank you. So we had the view for the high-grade panel that drilling internally in it, we could add ounces, and then we thought up plunge, we could add volume, and now we've moved to the other end. And so it's delivered really strongly for us. When you get 33 metres at 16 grams and 9.5 metres at 20 grams, these are pretty significant, impactful holes. We've added 30 metres of down dip strike, and so it's going to feed to a higher resource update in November, and it proved out the thesis that we had, that there was a lot of room to grow here.
Yeah, so this is pretty far over there in down dip. What kind of depth are we seeing here?
So we're only down about 200 metres from surface. That's one of the amazing things about the high-grade panel. It starts from surface, so it's not very deep holes to see this. But nonetheless, there were just big gaps in the resource. This sort of structural control on Ana Paula is something that we've really recognised that I think maybe wasn't truly understood before, and that's really opened the door to add high-grade ounces.
And do you plan on testing it even further down plunge going forward?
Yeah, one of the things we're noticing is, one of the amazing things about those widths and grades is that they're over 50, 60, 70 metre widths. And so in the core of the high-grade panel, it's a really wide, robust body. And as we get to the edges, it looks like it's fingering out into multiple narrower structures. And it's only bound by vertical holes. So you could have very easily, and there's no point for radio, I'm putting my hand out and showing drill holes, but you could very easily be artificially bounding that zone with a vertical hole, and the panel could be moving just 10 or 20 metres to the north or south of that. So yes, we do think there's continued room to add, probably 200 to 300, maybe 200,000 ounces plus above and beyond the resource update we'll put out in November, just by continuing to drill the high-grade panel.
Okay. So tell us about how you continue to go after improving the economics of this panel, because you also mentioned you have some other exploration targets that you're going to start going after. So really, what is the focus here with drilling with Heliostar at Ana Paula? How are you balancing this out?
Yeah, today's a fun day for us, as you touched on. We put out the down plunge results yesterday, and we've introduced a whole heap of new growth targets today. And I've probably been a little metronomic in the rescope, in that grow the high-grade resource, bring ounces forward in the mine life, and deliver the network as the key goals of this year. And so clearly we're adding ounces with the drilling. I think we've demonstrated that there's much higher grades that you can bring forward in the mine life with the mine plan release we put out. And we're waiting on the network at the end of this month. There's an indication that higher grade gold is going to give better recovery, and we're waiting to see whether that comes to fruition at the end of this month. What's really exciting about today is we found a whole new parallel panel only 50 metres to the north of the high grade panel. And it's almost, it's a little hard to believe at the start that you can be in a well drilled off resource and find a new high grade panel. And the reality is we've only recognised it in the last 4 weeks. And the reason that we've found it is most of the old drilling was from west to east or vertical. They had a certain model that they were pursuing. And so when you've got an east-west structure and east-west drill holes, you either hit it or you miss. And they got some really strong holes, like 54 metres at 7, 97 metres at 4.6 grams. But they were either drilling right down the guts of it, or they'd miss it to the north and to the south. So it wasn't until we started drilling on that better orientation, and then hole after hole after hole. We've drilled 38 metres at 7 grams, 2 metres at 13, 5.5 at 4, 4 at 10 grams. And then all of a sudden we sort of rotated it around and we're like, wow, all this lines up. And so we recognise with this sort of better understanding of Ana Paula that there's another panel 50 metres to the north. It's going to be 2 to 15 metres wide. It'll probably be 5 to 10 grams. It could be another 100 to 300,000 ounces that we can add to the resource. It won't be this resource in November, but add to the global Ana Paula resource.
So what's really fascinating about this, I mean, as an explorationist, were you always kind of questioning if this high-grade panel, these things typically don't just hang out by themselves, do they?
So we always knew that the opportunity was that there was more. All the focus has been on the high-grade panel, but we sort of knew when we first looked at this project, we recognised that structural control, and we thought, well, that leaves a few open doors. And there's possibility for more of these as we step further to the north. But the parallel panel is the one that's become really clear in our drilling. And you're right, I always have a view that if you take risks in good districts or good deposits, you'll get rewarded, and if you take risks in poor districts, you get let down. Ana Paula is showing that you take risks in this area, you're going to find more ounces. And so, we were always hoping to get that first resource into that 1 million ounce range. This shows us that by the end of next year, we can be a materially higher resource at these high-grade underground mineable cut-off grades.
Okay, very good. So, I guess, what would be the the blue sky here? Potentially finding where these panels may connect at depth. Is that possible? Is that something that could happen here, Charles?
It's a very dangerous question for you to ask, Trevor.
I know. That's why I'm asking the question, and I need a politically correct answer.
So I'll lay it out in 3 steps. So the first is the resource update in November will be a line in the sand for the high-grade panel.
Right.
Now we're looking, as I've touched on before, we think we can add to the high-grade panel with further drilling. We can add to the parallel panel. There's a number of other targets that we've talked about in today's press release. That could easily take us into the 1.5 million ounce plus range if we're successful on all of that drilling. And I'd call that, higher possibility, higher probability drilling, because we've got a lot of evidence that that's there. Then we've introduced targets like the West Breccia. We talked on, I think there could be more of these structural zones to the north. They just need systematic drilling. If you look at our neighbours, if you look at their cumulative mined history, resources, reserves, our 2 closest deposits are 15 and 20 million ounce deposits. So we're in a part of the world that creates very big ore bodies, and all of the mineralisation that's, say, at Torex, just down to the south, would sit lower than our drilling. We believe Ana Paula could become a very big deposit, but we're biting it off in steps, as you have to do as a small company.
Yeah, very good. So, it's really fascinating. So talk about how much, resources are going to be allocated with this, I guess, quote unquote, expansion drilling and going after these new targets. Have you set what a drill program looks like? This winter and into next year?
Yeah, so we just swapped the rigs out. So we've reached the cutoff for the current resource. So we've sent out the bigger rig that was doing all the geotech, the large diameter core drilling for network, for a smaller, more mobile, cheaper rig. So we'll be back underway in the next couple of weeks. Starting at the parallel panel and then the West Breccia zone, just purely because they're the shallowest targets, you get more intercepts for less metres. How big that program becomes is a function of the success that we have. So we haven't set what that looks like. We're fortunate that we're well funded. Probably for all the optimism about what's possible, it's a bit disappointing to have delivered on all these steps and be only a few pennies more. So the market can be quite fickle. But Ana Paula's delivering on that rescope, and it'll continue to grow. We'll continue to allocate resources to growth as a function of the results we get.
Okay. And there's a little bit of just administrational information regarding Ana Paula in the deal with Argonaut Gold, which you received the project from. They've agreed to defer the outside date of $2 million cash payment associated with the feasibility study to actually January 1st, 2025. Any insight as to, why pushing this out a little while? What's going on?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. We've also optioned San Antonio from Argonaut Gold, so we have a very good relationship with Argonaut Gold. And when we originally negotiated the terms, we'd set a feasibility study or an outside date of mid next year to deliver that. And then markets were tough, it took time to get the deal done, and so that date became before we planned to deliver the feasibility study. Argonaut, reasonably in our opinion, said, well, we're transferring the asset over to you, we think these costs are better in your court. So we said we understand that. In return, we would like the outside date of that payment to be January 1st 2025, with a view to us having done the feasibility study before that. So just working well with a counterparty, just cleaning up the agreement and everything. Any change to a material agreement has to be reported. So quite a minor change. The key for us is, if markets continue to be tough, we don't have a cash payment due until 2025, which is a nice window.
Okay, very good. A lot of work ahead of you. Obviously, the resource estimate being updated here in the coming months. So, Charles, you and I are going to be touching base quite often here in the next few weeks and in the months, the rest of the year. So, look forward to that. Safe travels next week as you head my way, and we'll talk to you again. I think we're scheduled again next week. So, be well, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. That's your corporate update from Heliostar Metals. They do trade on the Venture Exchange with HSTR and on the OTCQX with HSTXF. They are a sponsor of the podcast. I'm also a shareholder. All right, we'll be back. Be well.